let's continue with all these traditional money habits, money advice that we receive from our decades of all of our financial gurus that we listen to and we talk to and are out there teaching us about financial advice. Again, I'm going to tell you, I am not here to tell you that they are giving bad advice. I'm just saying that some of the advice can be harmful in today's world, in today's society, and the way things are now. So just like how we need to adjust things as we move along, you know, just like when we gain weight, we need to make those dresses smaller, larger, or if we lose weight, we have to make those dresses smaller. Then, you know, you always have to be adjusting. Your family gets bigger, you need a bigger house. So things change in the decades that we're going with. You know, we used to pay with bartering, with beads, and then we started paying with shillings, you know, so, you know, things change, and the way that we approach the societal change is what I'm talking about. So we have tried and true financial advice that we've received that has been vetted and have worked in the past, but they are not necessarily things that will work in the future. So we're going to continue with number 4, the future of financial literacy and the future of money management. So the next advice, number 4, is that we've heard is all debt is evil. So I'm a very faithful person. So if you have not realized that yet, or have listened to me in the past on my podcast or my YouTube, you will, if you continue to listen, understand that I believe that everything happens for a reason. And God is always within what happens to me, bad or good. If it's not a blessing, it's a lesson. So if it's something happens to me that I might not necessarily like, I will try to learn something from it and realize that God is trying to teach me something that's going to make me better in the future. So this is how I go. This is how I go with things. So I believe that money itself is not evil at all. It is a tool that God has given to us to work with, just like every other tool that he's given to us. Medicine, technology, he's given us so many tools he's given to humans. But it's us that are the humans that put our own personality on these things that he gives to us that makes it bad. So it's the personality that we put on money that makes money evil. It is not money itself. So it's what personality you use. Personally, I do not believe for 1 second that money itself is evil at all. It's the personality that we put on evil, and even says that in the Bible. So for me, you hear that there's no such thing as good debt. The traditional way of money advice is there's no such thing as good debt. All debt is overwhelming debt. On the surface that might make sense, since debt puts you in a hole and you need to climb out of it in general. If there weren't for debt, most people would not be able to buy their own home. In first world, because in the third world, people are not allowed to get mortgage. There's not lending institutions that can lend them money to be able to buy their own home or live in their own home. That is one of the reasons why there is no middle class in the third world. Our middle class comes with having to have leverage, being able to have leverage, being able to have leverage being accessible to us. So that's one of the reasons I know for sure, because my parents came from a third world country. They're immigrants. They could not have done most of the things that they did in this country immensely, like given the success that they've had in this country. I could not have done it if I was there. So, you need to understand that debt is essential. And not all debt is bad debt. You probably wouldn't be able to get a degree or become a doctor if that's what you're doing without debt, without some kind of debt. So we all can agree that tremendous amount of debt is bad, and there is bad debt and good debt. No matter what reason you're taking out a loan, it can be bad if it's abused, if it's not done for the right reason, if it's not calculated leveraging. I call it calculated leveraging. Just like I do when I'm doing something, I take calculated risk. That means I've thought about it. I understand how I'm going to pay it back. I understand what the interest rate is on it. Why am I doing it? You know, what is my plan for it? So, you know, those are all calculated leverage and calculated risk. If that's what you're doing, leverage can be your best friend. If you talk to most millionaires and billionaires in this country, they will tell you that leveraging, all of the Shark Tank people, if you talk to them, they will tell you that leveraging is one of the most essential things to be a millionaire or a billionaire and a successful one as they are. You know, a reasonable amount of debt in certain situations makes sense in building your wealth. Understanding the risk is one of the most important things. The difference between calculated risk and risky behavior. You know, for me, like I've told you, this is personally how I feel. I understand my risk. The difference between calculated risk and risky behavior is the foundation of my building wealth process. Leveraging has been a key part of my first world experience with building my wealth, you know, understanding building my wealth. And it has been a part of society since the dawn of time. You know, we were leveraging small things before. We would barter for different situations. We would pay in installments for certain things donkey years ago. So understanding the difference between calculated risk and risky behavior is really important, because if you are not analyzing what you're leveraging, why you're doing it, what the interest rate is, what your plan is on paying back, then it can be bad debt. So like I said, it's the emotion that you put on your things by not doing the proper investigation and the proper calculations about what you're doing is what will get you into trouble. Number 5 is living without credit. I know that this has been a tried and true situation, and I have to tell you that living without credit, I have never ever believed in since I have lived in this country. My father came from a third world country, so he believed in the cash system. In third world, in those days, in the 80s, in the 70s and 80s, it was an all cash system. There was no such thing as credit. He didn't understand what credit was. He never did that here. When he came here, he got no credit. He was happy. I don't owe anybody anything. That's his point. I don't owe anybody anything. Then he tried to buy a car, a used car. He's like, okay, I have $1,500. I'll get a car for $5,000, yada, yada, yada. He had no credit. He could not get a used car. He had to start building his credit. So when he started to build his credit, he bought a couple of pieces of furniture, which the furniture must have cost like $500. He put $200 down. He literally paid it to a little bit at a time so he can develop his credit. Now that is 40 something years ago that we're talking about. Credit was important then. But let me tell you, credit is so much more important today. So one of the reasons that credit was important then is because if you don't have credit and you all of a sudden need a home, a car, or something else in those days, you will notice your people will not be willing to lend you money because you don't have a history of paying it back. They don't know if you know how to pay your money back. So by building your credit and being a responsible credit and leverage person, if you take $1,000 and you pay it a little bit at a time, then the banks or the lending company knows that you are responsible with paying this back. You are a responsible person in paying these things back. So that's kind of your credit report is kind of your resume. It shows how responsible you are with money. If you have to pay money back, your responsibility with money. They can see that. They can't see your bank account and that you're paying everything in cash. They only can see that's your resume there. Now, decades ago, it was important, like I said, to buy a house, car, or renting a home. But today it is so crucial. You can't get a phone plan. You can't go to AT&T without having good credit. You can't get an insurance policy. You can't get a job. You can't rent anywhere. They check your credit for everything today. So it's not even just a mortgage or a car like my dad's days. It's everything you do today. Your credit score tells what your responsibility and what your track record is with leveraging. So you have to practice it in order for society to know. So while avoiding debt is great, you don't want to miss out on a lower premium on an insurance, or, a higher paying job, or a lower loan on your car or your mortgage or anything like that. That's going to be the cost for you. Higher interest is going to be the cost of what it is for you not having debt. So it's really, really important that you understand that credit is important. You cannot avoid credit in this society. Leveraging is a part of the society we live in. Doing it right and being responsible about it is what they're looking for. They want to make sure that you can do it, and that you can do it responsibly. So there's no such thing as I'm not going to do it at all, because when you really need to do it, you would not be able to do it. That's the end of number 5. We're going to move on to number 6 in our next video. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, feel free to give me a follow to get updated on new and upcoming episodes, and listen in every Tuesday and Thursday, where I teach you smart money habits so you can make better money choices with a financial goal focus.